Hi everyone, welcome to Music is a Journey. I'm Peter. For those of you who aren't aware, and that might be many depending on how many see this video, I started a series last year. And by series, I mean it's going to become a series. I've only done 2 videos so far, but the idea is that if I, as a fan of heavy metal music, as a teenager in the 1980s, were living in a different year, what would be the heavy songs of that year, hard and heavy songs that I would like the best? And then to make a selection of 10 songs that should go on some imaginary album highlighting some of the best hard and heavy music of the year. So I did 1976 and 1974 last year, and I've decided my next year, I actually decided this months ago, would be 1969, probably 2-3 months ago now. I'd slowly been selecting albums for checking out. I made a playlist of 29 albums, and I've been slowly going through them, and I have at last finally made my selection of 10 songs, which I will talk about in the official 1969 edition of this series. However, I found there was just so much good stuff in 1969, and I realized it was very tempting, as I thought about what to say in my video, it was very tempting to talk about songs and bands that I did not choose. And it got to be there were more and more of them. So what I want to do is when I make that official series entry video, I wanted to focus exactly on the songs that I picked and why I picked them. So I'm making a separate video for 1969, and I'd like to just talk about 11 albums, be it either for a song or for a few songs or maybe even for the whole album. I just want to tell you about 11 that were not selected. They were down to the last round when I was going through it in this past week here. And then finally in the end, when I made my selection, they were off the list. So first of all, from King Crimson, of course, an essential heavy track from 1969 is 21st Century Schizoid Man, covered by April Wine, covered by Voivod, covered by, I think, Suck, the band from South Africa, covered, and probably lots of people have covered it. Great heavy riff. The reason why, and very powerful song at that too, like it's a monster track for 1969, but the reason why I ended up not including it, and I actually was certain my imaginary album was going to start on side 2 with that one. The reason why I decided not to include it was just because there's an awful lot of saxophone playing going on here, and I don't have any problem with it. I love the track. The saxophone playing sounds great on the track, but there's even a bit of a squeaky squonky saxophone part in here, which is cool in the track. But as a metalhead, I just thought there were other songs that had more emphasis on guitar or maybe even guitar and organ, and I felt a little bit too much squeaky squonky saxophone didn't really fit what I was looking for. But still, great track. So 21st Century Schizoid Man got left out at the end. Now, Iron Butterfly, of course, everybody knows In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. I chose, I wasn't really sure if I would include it or not, but the opening track from the 1969 album Ball is called In the Time of Our Lives. That intro is a monster. It's just like booming, droning, buzzing guitar chords, very low, and it is such a fantastic intro. I bought this on vinyl, used way back in the late 80s, and put it on my family record player in my parents' house. I was living there, obviously. I was still in high school. And when that opening track came on, I couldn't believe it. Like, oh my gosh, Iron Butterfly were doing that in 1969. That is just so cool. The rest of the album, this actually is probably my favorite Iron Butterfly album, at least of the 1960s. There's just a lot of different interesting approaches. Some of the songs are tense, but not heavy. Some of them have a lot of good fuzzy guitar in parts of the songs, but not consistent, but that's okay because they're actually building it throughout the song. There's just such an interesting selection of songs on here. I've always really enjoyed this album. It Must Be Love, the guitar distortion builds and builds until the very end of the song is just totally fuzzing chords and stuff. And songs like, I don't remember if it was Real Fright or In the Crowds, Belle the Beast is interesting, but In the Time of Our Lives, if you've never heard that, like, the track is cool. It does have this this darker, more like haunting, unsettling atmosphere to it. But it's just that intro that is just so fantastic if you love like really loud, heavy, acid psychedelic stuff. 10 years after, I think this was the second album I ever had by them. Might have been the third. I think I had Undead, which was a live album first, and then maybe this one, or A Space and Time, and then this one. This has always remained my favorite 10 years after album. Listening to it during this past week here, I feel they're just really playing really hard. Like they're really hitting the drums hard, or hitting the guitar hard, picking the notes hard. The organ is actually not a standout instrument on this album, or at least on the songs that I had originally selected. The opening track, Bad Scene, it just has this, not a riff, it's just this droning buzz of guitar. It's just like Alvin Lee's just, you know, while the song is bouncing along and he's singing. Also, of his guitar solos, I know he was known as a fast lead guitar player, a very speedy fellow. Some of the tracks on here, when he's playing fast, he's also playing hard. Like he's picking the strings hard, and it gets a little choppy in places. Like he can't keep up with the pace that he wants to. But Bad Scene, there's more fuzz on it, and I feel the guitar playing is just more fluid. It's just really cool. So I've always loved that track. Then Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, they do turn that into a pretty hard-hitting classic blues track. The funny thing is that I don't know how old Alvin Lee was at the time. I haven't looked it up, but I'm gonna guess he's probably in his 20s. When he's singing Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, can I go home with you and I want to ball you all night long? It's like, how much older are you than this young lady? It's a little bit weird to listen to now, but nevertheless, a really hard-hitting track. And the final track, I Woke Up This Morning, another kind of classic blues song, but they play it so hard. Like, so really lots of power on this album here, and I do really love it. But in the end, it didn't quite fit the final mold that I was looking for my imaginary album. Freeze, I think this was their debut, wasn't it? Anyway, Tons of Sobs. The opening track here is Over the Green Hills Part 1, and then as that little acoustic track fades out, Worry comes in track 2. That must be Free's hardest hitting, heaviest song they've ever done. I have all 6 albums, and none of them stand out for heaviness like Worry does. The only reason why Worry ended up not making it is because there's this like bluesy piano that comes in parts, which kind of takes away from it. I mean, the mood of the lyrics is like the wind that howls, and you're beating hard, pounding at your breast, and it's a song about, you know, you've got to worry. There's a reason for you too. There's a silent, deadly message in the wind that's meant for you. It's like, it's a dark lyric and a really heavy sounding, thumping, pounding track. So, but in the end, it was that little bluesy piano that keeps making its appearances in there that cut Worry from my final selection. So this is Humble Pie's second album, Town and Country. That is not the one I wanted to focus on, although one of the tracks I had considered was, I gotta find out what it was now because I had them all on the phone that is recording this here. Okay, I don't remember what the track was, but there was one from Town and Country, I believe. However, songs like Desperation, okay, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This album also includes a selection of 8 tracks from Safe as Yesterday Is. And I think there are only 1 or 2 tracks from the original Safe as Yesterday Is album that are not on here. And one of them is one of the hardest rocking tracks, which is a disappointment. But songs like Desperation, Buttermilk Boy is a more upbeat but hard rocking track. Desperation is quite moody. Safe as Yesterday Is was good. I can't remember what that other one was now. Anyway, the songs that I originally listened to as a possible sample, all of them had some, you know, heavy, crunchy, distorted guitar. There were some various like heavier moods or more kind of epic feel to them, but in the end, none of them really fit what I was looking for. However, as a selection of 1969 tracks, that feature that distorted guitar and that kind of moodiness and so on, there are some good tracks on here for sure to be put on a playlist of just good, hard, heavy or moody heavy, hard and heavy tracks from '69. Next up, we have Fuse. This is famous for having a couple of members, Tom Peterson and Rick Nelson, later on of Cheap Trick fame there on this album here. We've got a great guitarist here called Craig Myers, a fantastic guy who was like 17 years old at the time they recorded this album. There was a comment somebody made saying that this is the most British sounding American band, which was quite a compliment. There's some of it I felt almost sounds like if Deep Purple's fourth album had been co-opted by an American band and they did this. And then Deep Purple had to do In Rock instead because someone stole their fourth album. Just the bass on here really has a Nicky Simper feel to it. A lot of the guitar playing is awesome. Powerful, soulful vocals on here. Just, of course, the organ playing is not up to Jon Lord standards, but still great stuff. And there was a track on here called, I think it was called Show Me. Maybe was it Show Me? Anyway, just a killer rockin' track. Heavy emphasis on the organ and parts, but great lead guitar playing, great thundering track, and some really cool bass sounds coming out of that as well. So really cool track. But basically this whole album is just killer. Then we've got the Open Mind, British band. So they had recorded an album. Basically, my impression of most of the album here is it's like a garage rock band, or maybe British is more like freak beat, but it has gone through the psychedelic years and it comes out with a kind of, a psychedelic accoutrements type of feeling to the music. They got psychedelic pixie dust all over them. So it is like a garage rock band, but processed through 67 and 68 and coming out the other side. However, the track that I really wanted to focus on, there are some really good ones on here, such as Thor the Thunder God. That's actually a pretty good one. It's just not heavy enough. I think the lyrical concept of and the music is heavy, but the tone is just not heavy enough. No, there was a song that they did in a separate recording session called Magic Potion, and that one, you can hear it. Like the guitar distortion sound is just different from the rest of the album. They've got double bass drum, double kick drum, I don't know what it's called properly, but anyway, on that track as well. And the more times I listened to the track, the more it just really grew on me. So in the end, it didn't make it onto the last final 10, which I'll talk about in my next video, but it was just such a great track that I think if we were to have a second record, like make this a double record for 1969 with 20 tracks, I think that one really would just sound really cool on that second record there. Okay, someone I picked up here finally after a long time was the Edgar Broughton Band's debut album, Wassa Wassa. So this was a real kind of shocking thing to listen to for the first time because the vocals are, sounds like somebody is making a statement about the industry, like the way vocals were going at the time. We were getting our like Rod Stewart's, Robert Plant, Ian Gillan, Rusty Day, if you know him from the Amboy Dukes, later of Cactus. So these like really powerful vocalists who could put a rasp in their voice. And it sounds like the Edgar Broughton Band were just going, well, we can't really do that. So instead we're just going to do these really outlandish, insane sounding vocals. There is a track on here called Dawn Crept Away, which is over 13 minutes, and it is just pure theater. I don't know if I really ever need to listen to it again. It's bizarre. Listen to it once in your life if you have to. But no, there were two tracks on here. Why Can't Somebody Love Me, which was actually a great sounding riff. It's just that riff carries through the whole song. They never changed to a chorus. They just play that same riff all the way through, which I felt was a bit of a detraction from what we'd normally expect from heavy metal anyway. 1969. Okay, we're almost there. And another one was Evil, which is pretty cool. I mean, hey, it's about evil and it has a really good riff to it as well. And it was just about selected as one of the 10 tracks to go on this imaginary album. But at the very end, I replaced it with something else, which I just felt was musically a little more serious and not quite so intentionally outlandish. But anyway, some pretty interesting songs on this album. Then we have a band called Valhalla from, I think it was from Long Island or something like that. They put out one album in 1969. This is a really cool, heavy American psychedelic rock album. We do have some heavy rockin' tracks, but we have some other tracks on here that are almost like late 1969 musicals. There's one on here called was it the Deacon, and it's got brass and strings, and it's just, it could be like from the soundtrack to the musical Hair. Like it could have been an outtake from that. One problem I have with this CD reissue is that it is, the master comes from vinyl, as do some of these. And some of the tracks, it's okay. You can kind of put up with this kind of echoey scratch that comes from when your master is a piece of vinyl and it's put onto a CD. There's this echoey, scratchy feeling that comes into the music. And it's really subtle sometimes, especially when the guitars and organ and everything is loud. But these tracks with strings and brass, it just comes out like, okay, I'm listening to a record on a cheap set of speakers, which is the unfortunate thing, because actually I really like, even if the songs are not what I would normally choose to listen to, I like how they fit on this album. But the opening track, Hard Times, that is, it just starts the album, bum 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 bum, like everybody's just pounding away. Really powerful, loud song. Another one on here is called I'm Not Asking, and that has some really cool, like just bass breaks and really fuzzy bass. And I think it was Heads Are Free is also a really cool track. So Valhalla, this is a great album. Again, the only disappointment is that the master is from a piece of vinyl, and so it detracts from some of the songs. But otherwise, yeah, great work. A band, you're probably familiar with a band called The Litter. They had an album called Distortions in 1969 with a song called Action Woman, which I think is one of those nuggets on one of those nuggets collections. But they changed their vocalist, and in 69 put out this one here called Emerge. And this is a pretty good rocking, hard rocking, garage rock band with a bit of psychedelic stuff mixed in. The track on here that I wanted to pick was one called Blue Ice, which seems to, I don't know if it's about being on drugs or not, but a lot of description about blue ice fields and streams that flow through glacial cavities, whatever. It sounds pretty cool because I love glaciers. And, you know, pretty powerful song. There's a part with the chugging guitar, you know, dun 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 dun. The vocalist has really got a lot of power to his voice, but it does have more of a psychedelic rock, garage rock feel to it, rather than approaching that 69, 70 really heavy rock sound, which it got called heavy metal at some point along the way. But definitely a great track. There's also one really good track on here. I think it's the last one on Our Minds. No, that's a bonus track. It may have been a Future of the Past then. Anyway, there's one track that is really a good, solid, hard-hitting track, but it's got like a 4-minute drum solo in it, so we're going to avoid that. And the last one to mention here is Episode 6. This is a collection of Episode 6 singles that were released. They never released a proper album. There are 28 tracks on here. This is featuring a very young Ian Gillan and Roger Glover in the back there, and Mick Underwood was the final drummer for the band. They had 3 drummers, and Mick Underwood would later on play in Gillan with Ian Gillan, plus he had formerly played in a band called The Outlaws with Ritchie Blackmore. Anyway, mostly 60s pop type songs, but near the end they started getting heavier. Track 27 is called Mozart versus the Rest. This is mostly lead electric guitar instrumental, but there are some parts Ian Gillan does some like do 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 in one part, and then yeah in another part, whatever. But anyway, it is just blazing electric guitar doing Mozart. Like it sounds really cool. It sounds like something you might have expected Ritchie Blackmore to do later on. As a guitar instrumental for 1969, it is pretty darn wicked. So that is Mozart versus the Rest from Episode 6. Okay, so those are 11 tracks that came down to the final selection, and then were I wanted to delete them from the playlist, but then I thought it's too good. I have to mention them in a video at some point. So, okay, now what are the 10 tracks? Well, I will record that video in another couple of days. Might be Sunday, might be Monday, might be Saturday, I don't know, but it'll be up in a couple of days. So when I post that video, I will put a link at the end to this video in case anybody says like, hey, you didn't put on 21st Century Schizoid Man. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this one. Leave your comments about any of these songs, any of these albums, anything you want to say about them, any bands that you thought, hey, why weren't they on your list? And, you know, they might just be in the next video. So thank you for watching, everyone. Take care and see you in the next one. Bye.